Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Daniel Childs here. Hope you're doing really well on this Monday. Rational perspective on Liverpool 2, Chelsea 1. If you're watching on YouTube and not listening on the podcast, there's a brand new background. I finally moved, but unfortunately the Son of Chelsea studio is coming. It's being built currently just to my left here. And by the end of this week, we will have the new studio up and ready. But obviously I didn't want to miss talking about such a massive game, which was Liverpool. But the reason I couldn't get my reaction out last night was moving stuff. It's been a very hectic time, but obviously very excited to move here and to start putting the studio together and seeing what content we can create moving forward. But let's talk about this game, and please do like, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. I'm not really on social media as much anymore. I'm especially not on Twitter, so I don't really gauge what those opinions are. I only really gauge Instagram, and to be honest, anecdotally, based on the Chelsea fans who are mates of mine and just what I've seen, it's actually been more of what I feel about the game, in the sense that, sure, losing away at Liverpool and losing to Liverpool is always a terrible feeling. In terms of, personally for me, in terms of rivalries, in terms of teams I dislike the most, I mean, no one even comes close. And I think when you're watching it on Sky, and it almost feels like I'm listening to propaganda for Liverpool rather than actual analysis of the game and, bigging up how wonderful this club is, how wonderful their stadium is, it's even harder to take. And especially in a game that was of fine margins. I think there is obviously a sense of frustration, a sense of what could have been, and, a feeling that it's absolutely a knockback. But I don't feel this was a bad afternoon for Chelsea. I feel that this actually showed the signs that there is a platform there to build on, and a sign that Chelsea are a lot closer to Liverpool in terms of just a game than I expected them to be this season. Now, that isn't cause for mass celebration. That isn't the end of the road. That isn't us being a newly promoted side and being happy that we just lost 2-1 at Liverpool. But it is about context, and it is about actually looking at the game. If Chelsea had been thumped 5-0 yesterday and we'd shown absolutely nothing, like we did, obviously lost 4-1 there back in January, it's a very different story. It's embarrassing. It's humiliating. You feel years away from ever getting close to competing with Liverpool. But here was a case where this was a game of fine margins. There was a penalty for Liverpool, and a moment where our defensive, I think, lapse in concentration shortly after scoring ourselves a really nice goal really cost us. But it wasn't a game where Liverpool tactically, I think, outfought, or it was like a masterclass from them in any stretch of the imagination. I think Chelsea out wide caused Liverpool a lot of issues, and I think that was something that really encouraged me, given the width being such a big part of the way Maresca wants to play. And you know me, I'm not toxically positive. I'm not someone who is going to just say, oh, we lost, but it's great. The reason I feel a little bit more and a bit more optimistic was because I saw a performance there that was competing with Liverpool. I think up until the Salah penalty, I think was actually getting the better of them. And maybe that immaturity and some individual mistakes halted that team's momentum. And I do think with better personnel and more time, I think if that game plays out again, Chelsea have absolutely a reason to feel like they can compete and go to Anfield and get a positive result. Because yesterday was not the embarrassment that we saw in January. It was not for me, the very dull and very kind of really depressing opening game of the season with Man City, where it looked like they didn't even have to get out of first gear. In this game, Chelsea made Liverpool sweat. I think they made them, actually forced them to be a lot more pragmatic in the game. And, they're not walking away from the game feeling like this was a battering. They're walking away from the game feeling like maybe, we got away with one in a sense. And I think that is something to not celebrate, but at least look at and go, okay, we need to see this more often from Enzo Maresca. I think the fascinating thing for me was in terms of team selection, and especially in central midfield. Yes, I think the other big and arguably the biggest talking point of the day was starting Reece James. I don't think any of us expected that Reece would go into the starting 11 straight away, but that's what Maresca chose, and that's what he believes was the right thing. And, he got about an hour, Reece, and to be honest, I think given this is a guy who hasn't started a Premier League game, I think since December of last year, obviously it was a positive to see Reece out there, and it wasn't a bad performance by him by any stretch of the imagination. So hopefully that can keep momentum going for him now back in the starting 11. Gusto then moving over to left back rather than Renato Vega. But key for me, the biggest The biggest decision I think Enzo Maresca made yesterday was in central midfield. We spent the international break talking about Enzo Fernandez, how he hasn't had a good start to the season, some of his limitations. To go with Lavia, who's barely played football, and Maresca in the press conference was like, I'm not that sort of confident in playing him more than once a week. And obviously he's not in, I don't think, the Conference League squad, so he won't be able to play anyway on Thursday. But to start him in this game, to have him and Caicedo as that pivot, and I felt that it was just so evident for me that is a midfield I want to see more often for Chelsea. I think that's what was so encouraging, the way that midfield was able to orchestrate us progressing the ball confidently, the mobility, and the aggression. And especially, I thought Caicedo was Chelsea's best player yesterday. I thought he put on a really, really complete performance. He sets up the equaliser for Nicolas Jackson, a really smart pass. We've seen that from Caicedo a number of times. And I just thought all round he was hungry for the ball, intercepting, being able to understand when to go, when to stay. You know, I just thought as an anchor for midfield, and also just someone who added aggression and movement, and just an ability of speed of thought as well, which you need when you're going away to Anfield. I thought this was a really good performance from Moises Caicedo, which is great to see because he's had a strong start to the year, and let's hope that continues. But I think him and Lavia, for me, really encouraging. I think the negatives of the game obviously are, there's two obvious ones. I think the first one is obviously Cole Palmer not really turning up, or not being able to do what he has for Chelsea. You know, these are games, again, I spoke about this on Friday, where people make a lot of judgments, and if you don't watch Chelsea every week, people will make snap judgments now. Palmer was well nullified in the game. There were glimpses of him getting onto the ball, especially as the game went on. But I thought that Liverpool did quite a good job of being able to really mark him. And you'll see that a lot. Hazard eventually had it, right? And all good players have it. You get doubled and tripled on. And like, that's when either Palmer needs to become aware of that. We need to find strategies to open up space for him. Or it then becomes a case of who else in the team is going to be taking responsibility. And I thought Noni had a really good first half. I think he had Robertson beat on a number of occasions, and at times maybe his final ball wasn't as great. Sancho, I thought, also showed that Chelsea should have had a penalty. I think based on the penalty or the foul from Cole and Curtis Jones, that should have been a penalty as well. And again, it goes to that fine margins, right? That Chelsea could have had a penalty at Anfield. They go 1-0 up. That, I think the game obviously goes in a completely different direction, in my opinion. But instead it gets given to Liverpool. And the fact that barely anyone on Sky was talking about that penalty incident, I think speaks volumes, because I don't see the radical difference. The fact that VAR barely looked at it. It felt to me at times like the referee was being overwhelmed by the home crowd. Poor officiating. It's the Premier League. What else can you expect? But those are those fine margin things, again, that really frustrate you, right? And they nearly had a second, but luckily that was overturned rightly by VAR just before half time. So Palmer, obviously, it was maybe a lesson for Maresca, a lesson for him that, you know, in these big games, he's going to have more focus. And it's about, are there strategies of him getting more on the ball? Also, he did have a chance. He did have a chance late on in that first half, and unfortunately, he skied it. So this was a game of fine margins, and in those, can you take that opportunity? That's what you get in a game that's that tight, and you aren't going to get as many chances as you do against Brighton, against West Ham, you know, to really find your groove. You know, you've got to be more clinical. And that's, you know, listen, how as Chelsea fans can we be anything but grateful and patient with Cole Palmer when he has an off day? Like, this guy has been a genius. He has been a superstar for us, and he's been carrying this team and this club really for a year now. So listen, I'm not, one bad day at the office for Cole Palmer is not something that is a reason to throw your toys out the pram. It's just the next time a big game comes around, how do we get Palmer more involved in it? That's, I think, the key thing, because teams are going to obviously be looking to nullify him rightly, as we would to any big opposition player, right? The other thing was, I guess, defensively, I thought the way we were structured for the second goal so shortly after scoring the equaliser was really, really poor. I thought Reece maybe went to sleep a bit, but just the way we decided to play the offside line. Curtis Jones, who had a really good game, really tenacious in central midfield, is alert. Sanchez, should he come out stronger and firmer? Is it because he nearly gave away a penalty against Jones for doing something similar and rushing out? And, you know, all round, it's such a sloppy goal to concede shortly after scoring what I thought was a brilliant equaliser. And it's such a shame, because Jackson, who's been criticised a lot and is doubted a lot, but that for what you'd want from your centre forward at Anfield, barely getting any looks at goal. He had one in the first half. There was a tight angle. I think he tried his best and maybe should have gone across the keeper, but he gets one. This is kind of bread and butter Jackson one-on-one with the keeper, a sort of move we've seen earlier this year, and he takes the chance. It was brilliant. Caicedo's ball from central midfield was wonderful too. The sort of pass that I think Enzo Fernandez should be playing on a more consistent basis speaks to Caicedo's creativity. The run from Jackson was inch perfect and the finish was brilliant too. And there felt a sense of momentum because Chelsea had built up some momentum. They looked comfortable on the ball. Can they now go and even try and find a winner or just get a point, which I think would have been a very, very commendable result. But to concede so quickly after that completely halts that momentum. There was obviously disruption with us making changes. James went off. Lavia went off for obvious reasons. Can't play more than like an hour probably. Lavia came on, Pedro Neto came on at halftime. I thought Neto had some really promising moments. The speed he has, I think that's what excites me as well. I think our width was something that excited me on a number of occasions. Nkunku came on a little bit later than I would have wanted. I think it's maybe that awkward thing again of Jackson scored, so you want to keep Jackson on the pitch, and then Nkunku, if he's played a little bit wider, can he play the same role? It is frustrating, right? It's frustrating to think about how to get Nkunku, Jackson and Palmer all on the same pitch at the same time, but then still keep that natural width. I understand it's not a simple answer, but Nkunku is a great finisher. So I think, that these are things that, again, are probably going to be valuable lessons to Enzo Maresca moving forward of what he wants to bring to these games, take away from these games. And I thought that Badiashile, I thought Badiashile actually had quite a decent second half, given this is a guy who hasn't played a lot of Premier League football and has looked quite shaky for quite a while. I thought Vega, I love Vega, I love his aggression, and I think he will continue to be a useful player for Chelsea this year. So listen, it's tough. I think the big thing for me is I just want to see Chelsea now take what they've done so far this season, which has been better than expected. Take what they did in that game yesterday. So the next time we're playing Arsenal in a few weeks' time, different team, and it's at the Bridge, which is different energy, but it shows that this team are confident on the ball and to go to Anfield and at times to play around the press. The other big thing is something that I've talked about a lot, right? And it's Robert Sanchez. I still don't think Chelsea are going to be able to do much with Sanchez in goal. He didn't have a disastrous performance by any stretch of the imagination. It wasn't exactly Brighton a few weeks ago where he's passing the ball, but there were a few shaky moments. And unfortunately, that is what Sanchez is. He's not the worst keeper in the world, but if you want to be an elite team, as we know in the Premier League, as we know in European football, you need to have someone who's better than just average. And he's going to go through runs where he may save a few penalties, have some good saves in him, but can be a liability. That position, unfortunately, at the highest level is going to punish you on the biggest of occasions over and over and over again. And I also just think that a keeper amidst such dominance, a big centre-back, we've seen it with Van Dijk for years, right? But he's also been helped by Alisson Becker in goal, who obviously wasn't playing yesterday. Ederson, obviously. And we know with Edouard Mendy for a period of time, but especially Petr Cech and Thibaut Courtois. These guys have such a aura around them. I think they lead the team in such a big way, especially when you go to these big grounds and having that assurance and that confidence that guy is not going to put you into danger, is going to make some big saves that most other keepers can't. Of course, that requires a lot of investment, but it is a position if Chelsea want to win serious trophies again, and especially if they aim one day to be competing for a Premier League title, they need to rectify, because I just can't see Sanchez ever being that keeper. I think he's got too many ricks in him. I think he's indecisive. I think he's got at least one shaky moment in him per game, and I think that's not good enough for a team with Chelsea's quality. So those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Did I miss anything? Are you more positive, negative, optimistic moving forward? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again very soon. All the best.